All right, good morning, everyone. Committee of Conference on House Bill 1521. And welcome.
So you didn't like our amendment?
That's correct. The, um, the limit that's included is, first of all, it's way too low. And secondly, it's not going to work, at least partly because a recovery house needs to be in a dense section where the people involved who probably don't have cars or licenses can get around, can get to jobs. You couldn't do it in Epsom. You might be able to do it in downtown Pittsfield or downtown Allenstown because they have facilities, but you're not going to get recovery houses out in the boonies. Good morning, Senator. So that's not going to work for us.
Senator Murphy, you were probably the most vocal in the Senate.
I was, thank you. The difficulty is, and having employed a large number of people who reside in these recovery homes in the past, these are very critical facilities. We definitely need more of them, but they carry a consequence. These homes reasonably have rules. Residents can't come in drunk, they can't come in high, they can't fight, they can't steal, there's a curfew. And if they break the rules, they're shown the door. And when they're shown the door, often they end up homeless. And in Manchester, the residents and the businesses have faced a severe impact to the quality of life. And when this bill came forward, I did some research and found that Manchester and Nashua combined have approximately 1,000 recovery beds. The rest of the state combined has about 300. So, this includes communities that have 0 beds. Berlin, Salem, Derry, Portsmouth. These are areas that have the density that you're speaking of. I understand that many of the residents don't have cars. Some do, but a lot do not. And they may need a walkable community, and I understand that Epsom may not be the ideal location for them. Although, to be fair, Goffstown does have a facility with 12 beds. So, smaller communities can support them. But it is not fair nor right that 2 cities carries the lion's share of these facilities, in my opinion. So that is why the amendment was drafted the way it was, and that is why the limit is set where it is, where Nashua and Manchester, basically, Nashua is 100 beds over the limit. If 1 bed for every 250 residents isn't the proper number, then let's talk about where the number should be. But that's a pretty, 468 beds in Manchester right now, 475 in Nashua. It's a lot of beds. It's a lot of people that are facing. I truly wish the best for them. I hope they get better. We need more facilities, but these communities can only take so much.
Well, Manchester is close to 10% of the state's population, so you would expect a significant number of effort there.
I don't disagree with the math, except that 10% and 44%, give or take, of the beds, it doesn't really match up. So we have to spread. These are critical facilities. I advocate for spreading the burden a bit among more communities.
Thank you. Have Nashua or Manchester come in saying that they need this legislation and that they're overburdened by beds?
I had a conversation with the mayor of Manchester. He told me he supported the legislation as amended. I've talked to my colleagues in Nashua, one of whom supported the amendment in the Senate and when did not.
Just
Oh,
follow up.
follow up, please, yeah.
If I could follow up, I understand the mayor may have a position. Is there a position taken from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen
It was,
in Manchester?
he did not indicate he was speaking for the entire board of mayor and aldermen.
Representative Dolan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I look at this from a practical standpoint, by pushing these facilities out into rural parts of the state, where the participants will have no access to the facility because they can't get there. They don't have cars. There's no public transportation. It sets it up for a program that's going to fail. And I think that's not smart on our part to set up failure before we even start. So these facilities need to be in urban areas that people can walk to or take public transportation to.
Representative, do you believe that Merrimack, Derry, Salem, Londonderry, Portsmouth, Hampton, Milford, any of these may be able to sustain facilities?
In most cases, no. I can tell you from Londonderry, there is no public transportation, and in order to get from wherever they're residing to their counseling sessions, they'd have to take taxis or other forms of private transportation that would be too expensive and not and just cause the individual not to show up or not to participate.
If that logic is true, then how come Boscawen has 47 beds, Littleton has 42 beds, Laconia has 65 beds? These are communities that have stepped up and done their share to help the rest of the state with this critical need, but Salem has none. It just doesn't add up for me, sir.
Another point to consider is this only applies to registered or certified recovery homes. And if you put a limit on registered or certified recovery homes, what you're going to get is unregistered recovery homes, which are probably not as well run as the certified ones in general.
I would agree with that, Madam Chair, but there is room for 3,000 additional beds under the limit statewide. So we're a long way from that.
Anyone else?
Senator Perkins Costa, we haven't heard from you. You have anything you want to talk about?
I think all these points have been well made. The intent of this bill is to make sure that there are no unnecessary barriers to setting up recovery houses, right? Because we know that these are an important tool for people in recovery. I think the point about public transportation is well taken. I also think the point about these being available in many parts of the state is important because whether they're on public transportation or not, we do know that there are people in recovery all over the state. That said, I unfortunately, and we had this discussion in committee, continue to believe that, this amendment may not be the best way to accomplish that. I mean, I do think more education is needed. I think that easing the zoning, which is done in the version passed by the House, could lead to other places sharing this burden. I mean, I think that's the intent. And so by capping it artificially in the amendment, and especially by the addition of the affirmative vote of the legislative body, I just think we're unfortunately creating exactly the kind of barriers that we don't want to have. And so to the extent that there are people who need recovery homes, I think we want to make them available, and that is the intent of the bill. And so unfortunately, I tend to agree with my colleagues in the House on this one.
I guess I'm the only one that hasn't offered an opinion. Senator Murphy certainly, was took the lead, in the Senate committee. But, you know, for years and years and years, we hear Manchester, Nashua, whatever, come in and say, you know, we're providing these services, but we're providing it for the whole state because people who need the services come to us. Safe Stations is one of the examples. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we passed the bill and we gave Nashua X number of $1 million, $1.5 million or whatever it was. But then they decided to discontinue the thing, but still wanted the $1.5 million. Okay? I hear from the people who go to jail and other things that the farther they are from their individual family and their network that supports them or causes them their problem, in some cases maybe, you know, that it affects their recovery. So there are competing, you know, things here. I guess what I would suggest, and that's if Senator Murphy is agreeable to it, that you know, since he's the most outspoken proponent of the Senate side, and you or someone on your group get together and see if you can't work out a compromise and reconvene the meeting.
We could, I suppose. The timing is going to be very difficult. But,
Then we're left with two options, and we find it difficult to support yours, and you're finding it difficult to support ours.
I think that is
but
the case.
One of the two, you
Um,
know, is it better to have one of the two than none?
Well, the people we've been working with in the recovery house business are convinced that the limit would be intolerable, so and they would rather have nothing. So that's the house position.
Well, I'll leave it open for you if you guys want to, you know, recess for a while or whatever, and talk to Senator Murphy or whatever. You
Well,
can leave it open for.
The only thing I would say to Senator Murphy is that if we clarify the zoning issues, we might be able to get some of these other municipalities to step up and
Right.
encourage recovery houses.
Right.
This came because the city of Lebanon discovered their zoning was an issue and they were confused and they needed to have it clearer in order to support the recovery houses they wanted.
Mhm.
That may be the issue in Salem or Portsmouth or wherever.
Mhm.
And so I would like to suggest that we try and see if clarifying that encourages
Mhm.
recovery homes to be located in other dense municipalities.
Mhm.
Again, if I'm only talking about dense municipalities, you know, I can go right down through, you know, Manchester, Nashua, Concord, Dover, Rochester, Derry, I think it's Derry, that, you know, the list of by population.
No, it's,
And I
It-
haven't named anything north of Concord yet.
well,
Okay.
the thing is that it's not necessarily the number of people in a town, although that helps. What it is to have a center. As I said, you know, downtown Pittsfield has a supermarket and clusters of businesses. It's feasible to live there without a car. And there are undoubtedly other small towns in the state that have old centers that are reasonable for this sort of thing. Littleton has a couple of recovery houses. Franklin has a couple. Because they have back when a town of 3,000 people had a downtown, and so they've got clustered housing and clustered jobs.
Well, why don't the senators caucus in another room? And, but
All right, you can use the 308 office.
You can go right now. As long as it's unlocked.
So long.
I think that it would be an acceptable bill
I know that Senator Perkins Coco wants to speak, and I think Senator Murphy may also want to speak.
Senator?
Yeah, thank you for giving us 2 minutes to confer. I mean, I do think there's some potential compromise here. I think your point, Representative, about this bill being needed for exactly the reasons that concern Senator Murphy is well made and well taken. You know, this bill, as amended by the House, may lead to other places seeing additional recovery houses pop up. And so, you know, I think it's an important public policy for that reason. That said, you know, I think there could be some compromise made with Senator Murphy's position if you guys are willing. But I think it's an important bill. I think we should try to work something out here to keep it alive.
I'm willing to discuss compromise as far as the limit or as far as the affirmative vote by legislative body of the municipality. You know, my position isn't set in stone, but I can't, in good faith and frankly out of obligation to my constituents, support the House position as it currently stands. And so the question for my counterparts is, are you willing to move? That's the question. Thank you.
No.
Okay, if,
All right, we will disagree, and thank you for coming and sharing. We'll undoubtedly be dealing with this in the future.
Yes, ma'am.
if you think that there's any wiggle room, you can certainly recess it, and we would try to come back. But it's up to you.
I don't think so. All right.